Thank you. I love that. All the roots grow deeper when it's dry. Don't you feel that? Do you feel that? I love it. So the topic of my talk today is appreciating abundance. I feel like we probably just had an abundance of food this last few days, and so I know I'm still appreciating it. My wonderful husband cooked Thanksgiving dinner. It was delicious. He is such a good cook. Quite a keeper. I mean, good looking and he cooks. Really. What more could a person ask for? But the reason I want to talk about appreciating abundance is that that's different from abundance. That's different from just knowing it's out there. It's actually cultivating an appreciation of it. I think that sometimes we use the word abundance to think of it, how do I want to say this? We think of abundance as a way to overcome our fear that there actually isn't any. You know, we affirm that we are abundant, but we affirm it out of our fear that maybe we're not. We pray for abundance from a fear that maybe we won't have enough. And this time of year particularly, I notice, taps into people's abundance issues. That's why we've kind of been talking about it all month. You know, historically, when we were an agricultural society, we were going into a time of rest. We were going into a time where we didn't work as hard. You know, the spring is when you till and prepare the soil and you plant and then you tend the crops all summer in an agricultural society. Excuse me, and then you harvest. And then with the bounty of the harvest, you have enough. You have enough. I want us to really hear that word, you have enough. Do we have an abundance? Well, maybe, but you certainly have enough. So now you rest through the winter in the knowledge that there is enough. And then as the supplies begin to grow low, guess what? It's spring. And you plant. And you begin again. That changed when we became an industrial society, because all of a sudden, factories work year-round. We're no longer an agricultural society. Factories work year-round. You've got to be at work, 10, 12 hours a day, whether it's winter, summer, spring, or fall. And so now you're going into a time where you're a wage laborer. This is with the Industrial Revolution. And you have to come into making money and working and being present for a certain number of hours in order to get your so-called bounty. And but then you're also closed over the holidays. And the church demanded that places be closed around Christmas. And now you lose a day's wages, and so you no longer are in the place of enough. This has suddenly become the season of lack. And what if I don't have enough? And what if the factories close down because they're operated by a water wheel and there's a freeze? And what if, I get laid off my job? And what if, and what if, and what if? And this only took place in the 19th century. None of us relate to any of these fears anymore around this holiday season, right? We still have it. How are we going to pay for Christmas? Our expenses are going up. But we are hardwired naturally to want to rest now. Do you guys find yourself sleeping later now that the sun isn't? I mean, that 6 o'clock alarm clock I have named Max. I mean, he's having a harder time getting mom out of bed to feed him at 6 a.m. because it is dark and it is cold. But we are hardwired for that. And yet, we're in the time naturally where we are to be celebrating the bounty. So how do we reconcile this? How do we appreciate the abundance around us at a time when our culture can be telling us that there's not enough? The first thing we do is I want us to rethink the concept of abundance, and I want us to instead see everything through the lens of sufficiency. Not abundance, but sufficiency. I like that word because it inherently means enough. But it implies enough with some left over. Not just enough, but sufficiency. A comfortable amount. But this is not something that exists outside of us. This is something we have to actively see in the world. We have to see sufficiency. We have to look for it. There is always enough. I love the story of a woman named Lynn Twist. She wrote a book called The Soul of Money. I don't know if any of you have read it. She's spoken around here before. And she and her husband Bill founded something called the Pachamama Alliance. And it was a nonprofit that helps bring, especially especially women in third world countries, out of poverty. And as she and her husband Bill were doing the research and the due diligence to create this nonprofit, they found that in the very poorest countries, that was where the greatest wealth was also amassed, in the hands of a very few. It wasn't equally disseminated. There was this huge split between the very few really, really wealthy and the vast majority of poor, people living in poverty. And the insight that came to her is that these are two sides of the same coin of fear. That when we are afraid that we don't have sufficiency, when we are afraid that God doesn't provide for us, when we are afraid that maybe all those promises and all those ancient teachings aren't true or only exist for someone else, give us this day our daily bread, and it does every day. When we are afraid that maybe that's not true, we go on either end of that spectrum. Abundance becomes the word we use for what we want when we don't think we have enough. So in order to appreciate abundance, we kind of got to shift our thinking and not even look at it as abundance, but see sufficiency. Sufficiency. I'm working with my own mentor right now on the concept of getting up every day and saying, today, I have everything I need. Today. Now, my ego can play tricks on me, and my mind can go, well, yeah, but you've got that bill coming due in 3 weeks, and you're not sure how you're going to pay that, or you've got Christmas coming, and you're not sure how you're going to buy a present. Stop. Today, I have everything I need. I have a home. I have money in the bank. I have a wonderful husband. I have a beautiful family. 3 cute little dogs. I have all of you guys. I have all the love I need. I have sufficiency. Plenty to eat. Leftover turkey. Sufficiency. And watch what happens. When we cultivate seeing that sufficiency, the next day we wake up and we affirm that we have all we need, and guess what we do? And the next day we get up and we affirm that we have all we need, and guess what? We do. And the day that bill comes due that you were so worried about 3 weeks ago, you wake up and you affirm you have all you need, and guess what? You pay the bill, and you still have all you need. It happened. Have you all had this experience in your life of worrying for nothing, and then you get to the other side and you go, what was I so worried about? Right. But we have to actively cultivate to see sufficiency. So the way we appreciate abundance is we see the sufficiency first. Because when we see the sufficiency, everything else starts to fall into place. The other thing we need to do to appreciate our abundance is we need to forgive frequently. Forgive frequently. Forgiveness, I always say, it's a process, not an event. I'm always amazed whenever I go into some sort of spiritual practice and it says, we're in some deep meditative state, and they'll say, bring to your mind someone that you need to forgive. It is always the same person, 100% of the time, and I always want to go, I've already done this. But guess what? It's a process, not an event. So, I can tell by the laughter, none of you guys can relate to this. None of you guys, you just get on with it, right? But it's a process. It's a process. So we keep at it. We keep at it. It's like peeling back the layers of the onion. Sure, we forgive, but then we get to do it again and some more. The reason that we need to forgive in order to appreciate our abundance is that everything is created through our own consciousness, right? God does for us what He can do through us. So if we have a consciousness that's mired in anger and resentment, we are not going to be able to see sufficiency, and we can't appreciate the abundance that's all around us because we are stuck in an attitude of not enough. Because it goes all the way back to our childhood fears that there's not enough love, that I'm not enough. And when we forgive, we can cut the energy of that, and we can let it go so that we can be present in the moment to see the things around us that show us our abundance, that allow us to appreciate it, because otherwise we are blind to it. It can be there, but we don't see it through our consciousness of limitation. So when we forgive, we have to really let it go. I found this story online. I did not know this about him. How many of you know the actor, comedian Tyler Perry? You guys know he did the whole Medea thing. He's one of the highest paid, I found out, entertainers. I love Google when I'm writing my talks. You guys all love it. I download for hours on nothing that has to do with anything. But this was good. He's one of the in the entertainment industry right now. So he started his career in 1993 with a self-financed show. And he started it, and he goes out there, he's got everything in order. He has, like experts and other people come in and comment on it. He goes out there in 1993, he does the one-man show, he does it, it's great, he's fine, he's put his entire life savings into it, and it bombs. Completely tanks. But there's one person in the audience who sees it that actually really liked it, maybe more than one, but at least one, who offers to finance it again. So now this new investor and Tyler, they work together and they tweak the script a little bit and they make some adjustments, try to fix it, and he launches it again, and it bombs. And now he can't get work, he can't find it, and he's really struggling. He goes through this for 5 years. He comes up with concepts for shows, he can't find financing. He goes to get acting jobs, and he gets little bit parts, he can't do anything. And then all of a sudden, in 1998, 5 years later, he comes onto the scene with the new show, and he's an overnight success. An overnight success that was 6 years in the making, When asked what the difference was, he told Terry Gross, he was interviewed on NPR by Terry Gross, and when asked what the difference was, I have to read it to you in his own words, it was great. He says that he needed to go within and do the inner work in that 5 years to overcome the childhood wounds that he hadn't dealt with before. He says, I think that's why the show wasn't doing well until 98, because I hadn't forgiven my father up until that time. There was so much anger and frustration that I was self-sabotaging so many things without even knowing it, because I hadn't let it go. Once I learned that, I forgave and I was free to go on. It's simple. When you haven't forgiven those who hurt you, you turn your back on the future. When you forgive, you start walking forward. He said all of that anger and resentment was wrapped up in the energy of the show. So even though people couldn't consciously say, oh, that wasn't good, oh, that wasn't good, they could feel that undercurrent of anger and resentment, and it didn't make them feel good, and they didn't want to come see it. By the time he reworked the show in 1998, that was gone. And so he was clear to move forward, and he could give that gift that Spirit put in him to give, and he could do it freely and unfettered without any old attachments to the past. And so that's when the abundance for him came. He could start seeing enough sufficiency from the internal perspective. He was enough. He could let go of the old wounds. He could let go of the abuse. He could let go of that. He could see that he was enough. And then he could be funny from the place of enough, not from the place of anger and resentment. And now, like I said, he's one of the highest paid entertainers. So we have to forgive frequently. This isn't something we just do once. It's something that we do over and over and over again. Because think about it, if we are emanations of the one God, and if God is putting each one of us on earth to be an individual expression, and to live to our personal potential, and in doing so, that is how we create the shared experience, because each of us brings a gift to this collective consciousness. Then what do we want to give to the collective consciousness? Do we want to give all of that anger and fear and resentment and not enough and da-da-da-da-da-da? Or do we want to give that clear, pure bell that is ours to give? Do we want to live in alignment and put that out there? But again, forgive, forgive, forgive. And here's the tricky one. It's not just other people that we forgive. It's us, at the end of the day, that we forgive. It's always us. It always comes back to that. It always comes back to that. There's this body of work called co-creation. I shared it with many of you after the Leadership Council did a Sacred Covenant of the co-creation process. The financial freedom class is based on this co-creation process. We're going to be doing one here the second Sunday in January. We're going to be going through a fear to faith process, which is part of it. It's an incredibly powerful, powerful piece of work, and that I urge everyone to do. But in that body of work, they say that the universal fear is that I am not enough. That is the universal fear. That is one of the things that is central to the human condition, is a fear that we are not enough and that we have then been forsaken by the power that created us because we are not enough. And then we all attract childhoods that seem to play that out. Not everyone has that childhood, but I think we all have an experience where there was a moment where we didn't get all the love we wanted, or we didn't get all the attention we wanted. It's part of being human. Or we didn't get all the Christmas presents we wanted, or whatever it is. When we hold on to the anger and we don't forgive, we reinforce the belief. The behavior, meaning lack of forgiveness, reinforces the belief that we're not enough. So every time we don't forgive, it brings up the old, yeah, well, I'd forgive them, except I don't really believe I'm enough, and because my mother didn't tell me I'm enough, and I don't know that I'm enough, and so I'm still mad at her. See the vicious cycle we get into? So forgiveness means transcending, becoming more in alignment with our spirit nature, becoming more in alignment with our God nature, letting that go. And when we do, then we see the enoughness that is everywhere. I think there's plenty enough beauty today, plenty enough snow. Then we get to see the enough from that clear place. And then finally, we get to imagine intentionally. In order to appreciate abundance, we imagine intentionally. For some reason, it's difficult to see the enough when it's all around us. But it's very easy to see the not enough. Have you noticed how easy it is to get into worry and fear and lack? So that's the filter through which we see the world. So just like a camera lens, when you see the filter through the filter of not enough, everything is going to be colored by that. Everything is going to be colored by that. I remember someone told me, do you remember the years and years ago when Oprah gave away a car to everyone in the audience or whatever? I'm like, oh my God, that is awesome. They got a car, that was great. And I had a friend who said, well, now those poor people have to pay taxes on it. That's the filter of not enough. That's the filter of not enough. You know, instead of, oh my God, I just got a $20,000 gift. So, oh my God, you just cost me $5,000 in taxes. It's just a shift in perspective. The event is exactly the same. Oprah gives someone a car. When we see through the filter of sufficiency, we appreciate abundance, but we have to check our imagination, check our thoughts, so that when we look to the future, when we look to what we want, we do it from that lens of sufficiency and not from the lens of not enough. How many of you have ever had a dream, and you look at the dream and you go, oh, this is what I want. Oh, but I don't think I have enough money, time, degrees, education, whatever for that. So you chunk it down. This I can do. And then you go, well, but I'm a single parent and I don't have enough childcare, friends, support, so you chunk it down a little more. And then, well, but you know, right now it's winter and nothing happens in winter, and so I don't have enough, and you chunk it. So you've taken your imagination, you've taken your dream, and you've gone by seeing it through the lens of not enough. When we appreciate abundance, we get to go, I am a divine emanation of the One. I am God made manifest. I am promised through every major text that I am here to express and experience more of my divine nature. And so I'm going to stick with this one. I'm not going to chunk it down. I'm going to imagine intentionally, without letting any of these fears run amok, and I'm going to know that everything comes to me through that one life. That's when we imagine intentionally. And when the fears start to come up, oh no, what am I going to do? We just let them go. We dismiss them. We allow them to be transmuted into something greater. We just allow God. We turn it over to God. We hear this all the time. Turn it over to God. Surrender. But do we? mean, I've surrendered as long as I know what's going on all the time. I don't mind letting God do it, but I want God to give me a memo every step of the way so that I know exactly how He's unfolding this. You gotta let it go. When we imagine intentionally, we let go of worry. You know, I was reminded in a class the other night that worry is just a prayer for what we don't want. If we believe that our consciousness creates our reality, and all of our attention is focused on what we don't want, then what are we putting out there to the universe? More of what we don't want. I love the Abraham Hicks work. I've talked about it a bunch, you know, and they say it's like the match game. You remember that old match game? You know, you turn it, oh, it's a match, oh, it's a match. So if you think about manifestation that way, then we don't get what we want, we get what we put our attention on. And so if all we do is put our attention on what we don't want, then we're just getting that. Oh my God. So I have a great story. My daughter, she didn't come any Sunday. She came Sunday night to Saturday morning. So she was here all week, and you guys didn't get to see her, which I know you're all heartbroken. But so too is she, actually. But so she left, and she was telling me the story. She's in a business fraternity. And she's one of the executive board members, of course, in the fraternity. And they took all the new pledges out for some party, illicit party where everybody's drinking and they're not supposed to be because they're all underage and, you know, this is college. But they make the executive board not drink at all so that they can kind of monitor things, make sure nobody's having too much to drink, etc. So my daughter has to drive some of these pledges around. And immediately, as soon as they ask her to drive, she thinks, what if someone gets sick in my car? I don't want anyone getting sick in my car. Now, everybody else around there says, so you clean it up. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. And she's like, no. I'm worried about this. So she thinks about it. What can I do? What can I not do? How can I do? So she puts towels all down in her car. She gets plastic and puts it over her back seat. She handpicks the people she's going to drive because she's pretty sure she knows who's going to get sick in her car and who's not, you know, so she handpicks them. So there are about 28 pledges that have to be driven, right? So she picks her 4, you know, so that's 7 carloads of them. She picks her 4, gets them in. 27 of the 28 are fine. One of them gets sick. Guess whose car it's riding in? My daughter's. And guess what? They miss the towels and all the plastic. So when she tells me this story, she calls me and she goes, so Mom, how do you get an unpleasant smell out of a car? And I've given her some hints. I say, why? And she goes, before she even tells me the story, she goes, I know what you're going to say before you even say it, so just don't. I'm like, what? I don't know the story yet. She tells me the story and I go, well, you know, she goes, I know. I was so worried about it that I created this event myself. I said, yeah. So how are you going to do it differently next time? She goes, I'm not going to worry about it? Like, that's the right answer. Are you really going to do it? We all know this principle. What's the right answer? I'm not going to worry about it. Can you? Can you imagine intentionally and keep your thoughts on what you want? Whether it's abundance in time, love, money, friendships, whatever. Can you do that and let the worry go? Turn it over to that higher power? I know that I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. You know it, but can you do it? In that choice point, when something happens and that energy wells up in you that goes, oh my God, what am I going to do about this? Can you just stop and say, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to come into alignment with that feeling of love and that feeling of peace and that feeling of power, because that's what God is feeling in this situation. God in this situation is not worried about how to, keep my car clean. God knows the higher truth here. God's not worried about how to manifest enough money for Christmas or a Thanksgiving dinner or, whatever it is, a job, a house, a relationship. God's not worried about it because God knows it's coming. Can I bring my own awareness into that higher than alignment? Can I imagine that intentionally of how I'm going to feel when I have it without the fear that I won't coming up? That's the work. That's what we get to consciously cultivate as we appreciate abundance. This isn't a reactive thing. This isn't something we sit back and allow it to happen to us. It's a proactive thing. We get to manage our emotions on this. We get to manage our attention on this. I always laugh at people who say, well, but and I say, well, just let go of the fear. Well, but I feel it. I'm certain that you do. But you can stop it. Like that Bob Newhart clip. Stop it. Just stop it. You can step in and do whatever it takes to come into alignment with that feeling. Can you do it? That is the question. Because that is how we appreciate abundance. We see sufficiency. So, see everything through the lens of sufficiency. Don't look for abundance, because that's usually born out of the fear that you don't have enough. See sufficiency first. And then forgive frequently, because until you forgive, you're held in that place that maybe I'm not enough. Maybe someone can hurt me. Maybe there is some energy that is stuck. So forgive frequently. And then imagine intentionally. Keep your attention on what you want. And ignore what you don't want. That's the thing. Don't push against it. Don't say, I don't want this. I mean, if I were to say right now, I don't want chocolate cake, how many of you just got an image or a taste in your mouth of chocolate cake? We weren't talking about chocolate cake until I said I didn't want it. So you don't push against it, you ignore it. And so when you imagine intentionally, ignore what you don't want. Ignore it. Because the universe doesn't bring us what we want. It brings us what we think about. And so when we stop and think and worry, we aren't imagining intentionally. We're allowing our emotions to make us reactionary. So by doing those three things, then when we really do those things, we can step into that place where we can see and feel the abundance all around us, and we can really appreciate it, not just notice it in passing and go, oh, that's nice. Look, okay, great. Trees, nice. We can go, oh my God, I wonder how many trees are on this property. It's amazing. We can really appreciate it. And when we're in that deep space of really appreciating, that's when everything we want flows to us. So with that, let's pray. So today, right here, right now, we are absolutely taken care of. Right now, we have everything we need. Obviously, we're all clothed. We all got here by some mode of transportation. I'm guessing we all had food that we wanted. We are in a beautiful community that loves and supports one another. And so right now, we have everything we need. And now is the only moment that counts, because that is where God is. That is where Spirit is. That is where our divine guidance lives, is now. Right now. And so right now, I recognize that all-sufficiency that is the one is moving in, through, and as each of us, inspiring us and uplifting us to understand a greater understanding that we are manifestations of the divine. We are all we need. And we have everything that we need. How grateful I am to know that each person here today is a manifestation of that one, and a unique manifestation of that one, with special gifts, special talents, and an abundance of that which is important to them. How grateful I am to know that God equally moves through us, that there is not more God one place and less God another place, but there is a sufficiency of God everywhere, in each of us and for each of us. How grateful I am to know that there is abundance in our world and that we appreciate it. And as we look for it, we find it. And as we see it, it expands. And as we release any ideas to the contrary, any anything unlike it falls away. And so I just know for each person here that we move out into our week with a new awareness and a new lens through which to see the world. That we move out into our week ready to appreciate, to truly take into our souls, into our very beings, and appreciate everything we see around us for what it is and for what it represents, which is the bounty that is the one spirit, the one life. How good it is to know for each of us that we are always cared for. And I know that that is true this week, that as we go forward and we place our imagination intentionally on what we want to experience, what we want to express, and we absolutely release everything that doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel like that. As we go into this week, I know for each one of us here that miracles begin to happen. Things show up in delightful and unexpected ways. And that's how we know that we are aligned with Spirit. And so I just claim for each person here that we are blessed, we are uplifted, we are inspired, and we are surrounded by a bounty that is unfathomable to most of us as soon as we bring our mindful awareness to it. And so from this place, I just give grateful thanks. I appreciate the abundance of heart, the abundance of spirit, the abundance that is everywhere present, particularly in this room right now. I appreciate that one life that moves through all of us. And I appreciate the law, the natural spiritual laws that work on my words, make them so even as I say them. And so it is with great gratitude that I just release, I let go, I release these words, I release this treatment, I release this understanding into a greater law, knowing that as I do so, my understanding is deepened, our understanding is deepened, and these words come back to me fulfilled and multiplied. And so recognizing this with great gratitude, I just let it be so, and I proclaim all is well, and so it is.